Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in from truly across the continent for another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. This truly is the best gig in the world. Now, for those of you joining us for the very first time, as many of you are today, it's early on in the school year. We are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and everything we do goes to our YouTube channel. So you can check out this program in 3 weeks, in 3 years, and like 4,000 others featuring the coolest scientists and explorers on planet Earth. Now, before I dive in with our topic and our epic series, I do want to note we have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to test some understanding and have some fun, you can pull up that game pin below and do just that. Extra way to keep it extra interactive in the middle. Now, I'm so excited of all days you're joining us today for our Ambassadors of Conservation series. We are partnering again with the amazing folks at If Then She Can, the greatest campaign featuring the coolest women science and technology and engineering mathematics experts on planet Earth to feature some of their best people working to understand and save ecosystems and species around the globe. And we're doing this because in just 2 weeks, the World Conservation Congress is happening. All the nature nerds in the world are getting together in one place to help shape a future that is better for wildlife and people alike. And so this is program number 6 of 10 in this epic series. I hope you take the chance to check it out. There's so much to explore and discover. And I'm particularly excited because of the 10 shows we're doing, this is the first with a totally new person. Dr. Jessie Rack is joining us, and today she is going to share some of her amazing adventures and her work on studying and understanding amphibians, one of my favorite groups of creatures on planet Earth, and some of the ways that they can adapt to life in the desert, some of the ways that we're in trouble, and some of the ways that we can help them. Now, none of you are here to hear me talk, so I'm going to zip it and turn you over to Jessie, my fellow Jessie. Welcome into the broadcast, and so nice to have you on.
Hello. Hi, Jessie. Thanks for having me.
It's so exciting. As I was saying before the broadcast, you've got kids in, I think, like 5 Canadian provinces, 4 states,
Amazing.
like all over the world, a few international groups. So thrilled to hear from you. And if you want to bring up our presentation and dive in, I can stop talking finally and let you do that.
I'll do it. I'm so ready. Is everyone ready?
We're ready. I'm
Can
so
you
pumped.
see it?
Not yet. No, it's not up. Nope. Take your time. This is half the fun.
Thank you for telling me. Amazing. Okay,
we can test with a presentation, but then when we go live, sometimes it doesn't like to work. That's half the fun.
No, it's going to be totally fine. I am a professional.
We are indeed. There we are. Cool.
Right.
I'll wait 2 more seconds. Up-see-do, and just get rid of that little banner, and we're golden. Perfect. You couldn't be better. Let's off to the races we go.
Let's do this. Okay, hey everyone. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Dr. Jessie Rack. I am a herpetologist, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Today, my presentation is called Mighty Morphin Amphibians, How Amphibians Survive in Arizona and Why They're in Trouble. So I live in Arizona, and I actually grew up on the East Coast of the US, where I went to school to study salamanders, which is this guy down here on the bottom right. Okay, so I said I'm a herpetologist. What even is that? What does it mean? So this word comes from a Greek word, herpeton, which means to creep. And so what I think happened is that they saw all these little creepy crawly critters and put them in the same box and were like, let's call them herps. And so what it is, it's the study of reptiles and amphibians. They kind of clump together like that. Another way to think of it, if you want to sound very smart and fancy, you can say it's the study of ectothermic tetrapods. And I'll define these words too. Ectothermic is what we think of as being cold-blooded. So they actually have to rely on the outside world to regulate their temperature. Tetrapod just means they have 4 legs. That's it. Okay, so reptiles, amphibians, what even is the difference? I feel like this is something that gets confusing sometimes. So let me define it first, and I'll mention a little bit about reptiles just so you're clear. And then we'll talk mostly about amphibians for today. All right, amphibians. These are my favorites, as you know already. Here's their characteristics. So they have moist skin. If you've ever picked up a frog, I don't know why the frog I'm picking up is this big. If you ever picked up a frog, then you know that they kind of have that sticky, moist skin like this. They often also have glands that produce poison and allow them to communicate with like chemicals. So they send chemical messages to each other. And what's really cool about the skin and why it needs to stay moist is because they do a lot of like gas exchange and water like uptake through their skin. So they're actually doing a little bit of breathing and a little bit of like taking in water right through that absorbent skin. Also, as we just said, they're ectothermic. So again, you might have heard this before as like cold-blooded. they actually don't have cold blood, but what they do need is to stay outside in the environment in order to keep themselves a certain temperature. And finally, if you know anything about amphibians, you probably know they have a baby that looks a lot different from a grown-up, right? So that we call this a complex life history because their babies live in water usually, and then the adults are what we call terrestrial, meaning they live on land. All right. There's a lot of amphibians in the world, more than 5,000 different species. And here are the different flavors of amphibians you might see. You probably already know about frogs and toads. You're all probably really smart people. You already know about this. Salamanders, these ones can be a little confusing because their body shape looks more like a lizard, but in fact, they have that kind of moist skin of amphibians. And they have a baby aquatic larva. But wait, there's more. If you thought this was all the amphibians in the world, boy, do I have news for you. There is another group of amphibians that's kind of a secret. No one talks about them as much. They're called Sicilians. That is not like they're from Sicily, but Sicilians is their own name. And I hear you saying to me right now, wait, Jessie, that's a worm. You have no idea what you're talking about. To which I say, okay, it kind of looks like a worm. I see it. I do. And they actually live underground, usually in South America. But they may look like a worm, but they actually have a skeleton in there, which worms don't have. They have bones and they have teeth, which is bonkers. And I really love it. So those are the flavors of amphibians. Just really quickly, I want to mention what are reptiles and how are they different, so we have a clear idea of how it works. So reptiles, instead of having that moist skin where they uptake stuff, their skin is covered in scales like this. You probably already know this. The scales are made up of a protein called keratin. It's the same thing as what your fingernails are made up of. So if you've ever imagined yourself as having fingernails all over your entire body, you're dreaming of being a reptile. That's what that is. So the thing they have in common, reptiles are also ectothermic. So they also rely on the outside world to stay warm or cool. But now reptiles have something different. Rather than amphibians, they have to lay their eggs in water. Reptiles instead they can now lay their eggs on land. So amphibians' eggs are covered in this really like a jelly, and their jelly is permeable to the water, so the water can go in and out. So they have to put it in the water so they don't dry up. But reptiles have developed this kind of leathery shell around their egg, and then they've managed to have the water kind of inside of the egg. So now they can lay their eggs on land, and their babies don't need to be in the water and don't need to go through that multi-stage life cycle, which is pretty cool. All right, so that's your background of reptiles and amphibians. Again, we're going to be talking entirely about amphibians today because I think they're so great. The word amphibious, in fact, means to live a double life. So you can think of them as the secret agents of nature. All right, so I'm going to talk specifically about amphibians in Arizona. So I want to talk about what even is a desert. There is a big old Sonoran desert in Arizona, but even the parts that aren't desert, that have trees and stuff, are still very, very dry. So when I ask this question, often people are like, oh, it doesn't rain or it's hot. And those are true. But the main thing that makes a desert is how dry it is. So this is the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. This is a really special one. It has what we call a bimodal rainfall pattern. It rains 2 times a year. There's 2 rainy seasons. One is in the summer and the other one is in the winter. And what's cool about this is because of all of the factors of the rain and where it is located near mountains and in the country, it has a lot of very special plants and animals that live there. So you can see in this picture, this is a photo I took from Tucson, which is in southern Arizona. You can see probably what you think about when you think about a desert are those big, tall cacti, right? These are saguaro cacti. And that's really special. But in the background here, you can see the mountains. And so Arizona is so diverse in terms of nature and in terms of animal habitat that if you were to drive from this desert in this picture up to the top of that mountain, you would go through 5 entire what we call biomes. They're like habitat areas for animals. So you would go through the desert, you would go through the grassland, you would go through the you would go through the chaparral, which is like low, bushy, dry stuff. You would go through the deciduous forest, and then you would arrive at the top where there's actually ponderosa pines and aspen. So even though we think about desert in Arizona, there's all kinds of different habitats and places for animals. And even when there's stuff like trees and things that don't look like this picture, it's still very, very dry. Just as another example, here's a map of Arizona. This is what it looks like. And I just want you to look at all the different colors on this map. Every different color in this picture is a different habitat for animals. And if you know about animals, you know they need habitat to live, right? So it's like food, water, shelter, space. They need all of those elements of habitat in order to survive. And so because there's all of this different variety, that means a lot of very different animals can live here. A quick definition. So I'm going to be talking a lot about adaptations to Arizona and to the desert. So an adaptation just means any trait that allows a living thing to survive better in the place where it lives. And my picture here is an example of, it's an animal called the peppered moth. This is a really famous one. So on the left side here, that white moth, that's what they used to look like. And the white moths were very pretty. See the little speckles on its wings, like pepper. They were just like living their lives. And when the Industrial Revolution happened, the Industrial Revolution had a lot of soot and a lot of smoke when we got industrialized, and all the trees where they lived got covered with this black soot. And all of a sudden, these white moths were standing out against the dark. And what do you think happened to the predators when their predators could see them so good? Anyone have a guess?
Yeah, lots of eating. Delicious, delicious, easy to eat moths.
Yeah, exactly. They were like so easy to see against the dark background. So over time, some of them started to get a little darker. See the one on the right? And those ones were camouflaged. And so they did not get eaten as much. And so this was an adaptation to the place where it lived. That's my example. All right. So let's start narrowing down our focus to amphibians in the desert. Look at this adorable little guy. Okay, so since, as we know now, adaptation is all about responding to the environment and the place where you live, you can imagine that amphibians in Arizona have a very specific set of challenges, right? Because as we said, Arizona is really, really dry. There's often not very much water. There's a lot of deserts, and it tends to get really hot. And the main thing is that it's called aridity, how dry it is. So what do you do if you are, like, as I've described, an animal that they do water uptake through their skin to survive, and they need water to put their eggs in? Like, where do you put your eggs? And where do you put your body, right? These are the concerns of an amphibian. And so one solution that they have, frogs and toads and salamanders in the desert, they spend a lot of time underground. And when they live underground, they can take water kind of from the soil around them through their skin in order to stay kind of moist and wet. And they wouldn't be able to live in these environments if their skin wasn't permeable like that. So the biggest challenge, because they can do that, the problem becomes, where do you put your eggs, right? So a lot of them have had to figure out a way to develop very rapidly from like tadpole to baby frog in order to get out of water that's drying up. And there's so many amphibians that have overcome these challenges in different really special ways. I'm going to first you may be like, there can't be that many amphibians in Arizona. It's so dry. There's not much water. There's actually quite a few. Let me show you. Here they are. We've got tree frogs. We've got neotropical frogs. We've got narrowmouth frogs. We've got true frogs. We've got toads. We've got spadefoots. And we even have one single salamander, the barred tire salamander. I don't have time, unfortunately, because there's so many to talk about all of them. So I've picked a few with very cool and sometimes bonkers adaptations to their environment that I want to highlight for you now. All right. So I have these sort of organized by different reasons for the adaptation. So the first one is adaptations for predator defense, venom versus poison. So what even is the difference? here is a simple guide to venom versus poison. If you eat something and then you get sick, it was poisonous. However, if something bites you and then you get sick, that thing was venomous. It's very easy. So sometimes I hear people accidentally say, oh, a poisonous snake. Well, the truth is, if you were to bite a snake, you'd probably be okay. So they're actually venomous because the snake has to bite you for you to get sick. So that's how you know. We don't have a venomous frog here. We do have a poisonous toad in Arizona. It's called the Sonoran desert toad. You can't even tell from this picture. This thing is massive. I actually have a video of me somewhere on YouTube where I'm talking about them, and I caught one and I'm holding it up and it's literally this big in front of my face. They're the largest toads native to North America. They have defensive toxins that are really, really potent that are released from glands. So let me show you, if you can see his eye. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but maybe you can. There's his eye. This is his eardrum. We call it the tympanum. And do you see this big bumpy thing behind his eardrum?
Yeah.
That is called the parotoid gland, and that's where all of the poison comes out of. So it makes this really potent toxin or poison. It's one of the strongest hallucinogens in nature, which means any animal that tries to eat it and gets it in its mouth is gonna its brain is gonna be affected, and it's gonna see things and feel very weird. So it has a lot of predators, but they think that the adult ones are pretty safe from predators because nobody wants to eat it. And so the biggest issue now or often is animals that harass it, which when you live down in the desert, like in Tucson, sometimes people's dogs will find one, and it's important to keep your dog away because your dog can get very sick or even die if it was to pick up one of these toads. And the toads are really just trying to protect themselves. So that's very cool. And I love these guys and they're very cute. Also, one time I was in the field and I saw one and I expected, if you see a frog or a toad, you expect it to hop, hop, hop. This guy, I swear, was just kind of stomping across. He was so funny. It walked so funny. So that's a very cool example of an adaptation to protecting itself from predators. All right, let's talk about tails and limbs. This is adaptations of legs and toes and tails. You all know amphibian larvae. What's a baby toad or frog called? Anyone know?
Let's see. Let's get them in.
You can shout out answers.
Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of folks in the chat from Texas, India,
yes.
South Carolina, and our YouTube thing, our live class, Mr. Alston's class. What is a baby toad or frog called? Yes, tadpole. Yes, very good. Way to go.
You guys are so smart. Good job. Yes, exactly. So amphibians, baby toads and frogs, tadpoles. Maybe you've done the thing where you got to raise them in your classroom and see them. They're so cute. And so you know that their tail's really important. It's most important when they're a baby, right? Because they swim and they need it to push themselves around. And then what happens is first, right, they grow some back legs. You can see them starting on this guy. And then they grow front arms, right? Here's one with both. And so when they have both back legs and front legs, wait, do you know what that one's called? There's another name for it. What's a frog with all its legs, but still a tail?
I think so this is really tricky. I'm not even sure I know this, and I'm a biologist by background. Is it a froglet?
It's a froglet. You did know it. It's a
froglet.
froglet.
Okay, cool.
Or if it's a toad, the one in this picture is a toad. It's called a toadlet. It's so cute. So when it's at the stage with all four legs and a tail, we call it a froglet or a toadlet. And then what happens next, because the grown-up frog or toad doesn't have a tail anymore, here's what's happened with its tail. It actually absorbs it. So it kind of sucks it back into its body really slow over a long time. And it's through a process of the cells in its tail are like, see ya, I gotta go. And then it just absorbs it and keeps all of that protein and stuff in the stored tissue to live off of. And they found that this bottom one is a spadefoot toad, which occurs here in Arizona. There's several species. And so their thing is they have adapted to metamorphose really quickly so they can get out of the water. And they end up turning into a baby frog or a toadlet, with a really long tail. And so scientists think that that's so they can kind of take a packed lunch with them up on land so they can keep living off the food in their tail until it's time to start eating like a grown up. So they absorb their tails. I love that. I have another weird one for you, sticky toes. So maybe some of you live places where there's tree frogs. In Arizona, we do have tree frogs, but we also have, these are called canyon tree frogs because they tend to not be on trees. They tend to be on canyon walls and on rocks. But just like any tree frogs you're familiar with, they have sticky toes, which is very cool. And we actually know a lot about how they work. So the sticky toes have little pads on them, and they secrete mucus kind of around the little sticky toe pads. And the mucus just like keeps them clean and keeps them all like stuck to the surface. And then when they move, it's like a whole bunch of suction cups. They're like pop, 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 pop. And that's how they stick to those vertical walls, which is really cool. Something else that's cool about these guys, which maybe you can tell from this photo, doesn't have anything to do with their feet, but it rather has to do with their skin and their colors. Can you tell what it is? What would you say is good about its skin that's helping it in this situation, protecting it from predators? That's your hint.
What have we got? A little bit of protecting from skin. Mr. Olson's class, if you guys want to unmute your mic, we can always come to you as well.
We're all friends here.
Yeah. What do we think? Come on in.
What do you guys think?
Bumpy.
It's
bumpy and camouflage.
Bumpy and camouflage?
I heard it. That's great. Yeah, it's bumpy and it's camouflage. You're so smart. Exactly. And you can tell these two different frogs. The one on the left is on that more kind of like brownish yellow granite. And so it's exactly that color. And the one on the right is more on like the grayish one. And so it's that color. And they have the ability to actually change the color of their skin to match the background, which is amazing. And this is another really cool predator defense that these guys have. All right, next, love the one you're with. This is adaptations for mating. I finally get to talk about my favorite one ever, the barred tiger salamander. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. So I told you I studied salamanders. These guys are cousins of the salamanders that I studied. It's the only salamander in Arizona, although there's 3 subspecies here. 2 of them are native and 1 is non-native. One of the native ones is actually endangered. They're very cute. Okay, so you may know less about amphibians depending on where you grew up. So like other amphibians, like frogs and toads, they don't have a tadpole, but they do have a baby that has to live in the water when it's little. And they look kind of like tadpoles, except they have gills. Look how cute it is. Oh my gosh. You may recognize it. It looks kind of like an axolotl, if you've ever heard of an axolotl. I know they're like very cutesy and popular. All that is, it's a species, it's a cousin also of the barred tiger salamander. And that's like a baby form of it when it looks like this. Okay, so the barred tiger salamander has something. So let me tell you sort of how salamanders work typically. So they lay their eggs in water and then their babies hatch out, and we call them just like salamander larvae because tadpole, there's no specific name for it. So they're salamander larvae, salamander babies. And when it's time, those babies go through metamorphosis, right? And they become this cute adult with its like long body and its moist skin. And the adult can kind of like walk off to another pond if it wants to and find a partner and like mate and lay eggs and do all of that. But sometimes in Arizona, remember I told you that it's like very dry and you kind of can't count on water in the desert. So sometimes this salamander has a very weird thing where instead of growing up and becoming a grown-up and going off and finding a boyfriend or girlfriend and like laying eggs, it stays a baby. So they can stay a baby for their whole life. And a cool adaptation for this very dry area is that the baby form that looks like this can actually be a grown-up inside. Like it looks like a baby, but inside of it, it becomes adult and it can then lay eggs if it wants to. And that's really bonkers. So imagine that if like everything looks bad out there and there's no guarantee of finding another pond and being able to lay your eggs in it, you just stay where you are. And it's like the like older sibling that never moves out kind of, except they've become an adult, but still are masquerading as a baby because they still live in the water and have those external gills, which is very funny. Okay. I think I have one more adaptation. I do have one more adaptation to talk to you about. We always think about the heat in Arizona, right? It's not just dry, it's also hot, it's both. So what do you do if you're an amphibian and your body is just made to take up water, but it also dries out really easily? Okay, this is a spadefoot toad. Just like that little baby toadlet I showed you, this is what it looks like as a grown-up. They're so cute, you guys. They're like the cutest. Look at those big giant eyes. Okay, so spadefoot toads are cool because they have those big eyes. They're nocturnal, so they come out at night. They also have little ridges on their back legs, which they use to dig down into the ground, like a spade, like a shovel. So what they do is when it's really hot and dry, and like the hottest, driest season in Arizona, they can dig down up to a meter, which is like 3.3¼ feet into the ground, and they stay there under the soil. But wait, if you're an amphibian and you're in the soil and it's all dry, wouldn't you just dry out? Don't worry, they have an adaptation for that. So these guys actually have evolved to shed several layers of their skin, and then they secrete a mucus that kind of sticks all of these skin layers together around them and makes like this weird cocoon, which they then curl up in. So it's sort of like, you could imagine it if like you were to take a nap in a sleeping bag made of your own snot and skin. So sort of like if you could picture it.
I can picture it.
Yeah, everyone take a minute and imagine that, dream about that. And so they stay like this in this sleeping bag of their own skin and mucus underground for a really long time, up to 4 months. They can just stay like that. And they go dormant. And so you may have heard the word hibernation. So hibernation is like a specific word for when it's cold. And when it's hibernation, or excuse me, when it's going dormant because it's hot, we call it estivation. So they're estivating and hiding away from the heat in this sleeping bag of snot and skin until the rains come, and the rains like soak down through the water and touch them, and they kind of wake up, and then they scrape away their little cocoon. And then the best part is, because of course nothing is wasted in nature, they then like peel it all off and they eat it for the extra protein, and then they crawl out of the ground and go off and live their life, which is amazing. Great, that's my favorite one. All right, so those are just like a few highlights of some of the amazing amphibians we have here. As I showed you in the beginning, we have a lot, but I want to talk to you about 3 big things that are threatening our amphibians here. The first one is drought. So as we now know, amphibians depend on water for a place to put their eggs and often to stay and live there. And the problem is here, there's so many people in Arizona that they're using more water and they pump it from the ground, right? So it comes from wells and from aquifers, and they're using more water than what's falling from the sky. And so this is a picture of the San Pedro riverbed. So what happens when people use more water than falls is that a lot of the little ponds and streams and things are drying up. And this is a problem because that's where you need to put your eggs, right? And that's where you need to put your body. And sometimes if you're an amphibian. Another problem is the climate is changing in Arizona. So every year it gets a little hotter and a little drier. And that means there's less water for amphibians to live in. That's problem number 1. Problem number 1 is disease. So there's several diseases that affect amphibians. One of the biggest ones we're worried about, and I'm worried about as a herpetologist, is called chytridiomycosis, but you can just call it chytrid, CHYTRID. And chytrid is a fungus. It infects amphibians around the world. And what happens is the little fungus lands on their skin and it kind of grows, and it blocks their skin from doing the water uptake and the gas exchange, like I was telling you, and it kills them. And it's really sad. In other places like Panama, it's caused extinctions of entire frog species. And in Arizona, it hasn't done that yet, but we do have frogs, especially frogs. There is a kind of fungus of chytrid that infects salamanders, but we do have some species of frogs that are getting sick, and some are dying from the infection. And the third one, I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I love this picture. The third big problem here for amphibians is invasive species. So an invasive species is any animal that isn't native to the ecosystem, meaning it didn't evolve there, that causes harm to the species that live there by eating them or eating their food or taking up their habitat. And the big one affecting Arizona amphibians is also an amphibian. It's the bullfrog. Do you see this giant guy on the right? The bullfrog is native to the eastern US and Canada, but it's not native to the Southwest. And where it occurs, they eat, they're predators, they're monster predators. They eat anything that fits in their mouth. If you can watch videos of them just like shoving things in, and they're a lot bigger than our native species. See? So they'll just like, if they occur in the same pond as like something in trouble, they can just eat them all day. So these things are scary, but all hope is not lost. I want to end on the note of like what we're doing, what's happening. A lot of folks are working hard to make sure Arizona's amphibians are protected. So for example, we have a frog called the Chiricahua leopard frog that is federally threatened under the Endangered Species Act. And since 1995, the Phoenix Zoo has been breeding and releasing them. So you can see this person on the left is releasing a little froglet into the water. And they've released over 29,000 tadpoles, juveniles, and adult frogs. Other scientists, so that's one example of how they have a breeding program for this, and they're releasing them. Other scientists, including folks in the Forest Service and Game and Fish and Wildlife, are working to monitor the number of amphibian species in different areas. So they like hike around and they look for them or record their calls to know if they're there and just keep tabs on how they're doing. And scientists like me work to spread the word of how cool these amazing little animals are and to teach people all the ways that amphibians have adapted to living in a really, really challenging place. And that's Arizona. So thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you, Jessie. That was so much fun. And your passion is, I think, the highest of our entire series for Ambassadors of Conservation. So much, much appreciated. I love when people love their animals the way you do. It makes it for such a special show. Guys, we're going to dive in with a Kahoot. So find out who's paying attention, have some fun, and then we're going to dive in with all your questions. You've already shared a bunch of questions on YouTube. Mr. Alston's class, we're excited for you to chime in with some too. And if you have extra questions, please do email them to me after the fact. I'll pass them along to Jessie. We'll get all your amphibian queries answered because I know you guys just can't stop. So with that, and for you who might be doing this the first time as well, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is a double Jessie everlasting respect. So no pressure at all. We're going to dive in with this and get underway and have some fun. Here we go. Drum roll, please. In 3, 2, 1. All right, question 1. What are some key amphibian traits? We talked about this at the beginning. Are they moist skin, ectothermic or cold-blooded, complex life histories, or all of the above? And if you've ever joined me for Kahoot before, you'll know that I'm particularly fond of a certain kind of answer that might be our final one. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Not at all. I think the moist skin's so fun. I just like, I love seeing amphibians because of it. It's so fantastic. Oh, look, we threw them off so much. Everyone was just like moist skin.
Well, the truth is they're all right.
All right, which is why all of the above is correct. Ooh, okay, let's see what that does. Mystery Eagle has our lead.
Some are more right than others.
Yes, all of the above covers the gamut, which is very good. All right, question 2. Multi-select, so more than one of these is correct. What are some examples of amphibians?
Ooh.
Frogs, caecilians, salamanders, sea snakes. Multiple of these are right. Maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 2. What do we think? And I love that you said not Sicilians. It's the hardest thing of saying their name. It's like, not Italians, we swear. They're mammals.
I mean, yeah, no, I don't think they actually occur in Italy at all. So it would be very confusing if they lived there.
Nice. So 3 of these are correct. Sea snakes are reptiles. They kind of look like those Sicilians, but they are not.
It's tricky. They have scales, though.
Yep. A little bit different. Mystery Eagle is leading Invincible Eagle. We got eagles galore at the top of our leaderboard.
And an excited raven in third.
Very nice. My favorite bird. All right. If something poisonous bites you, you will be fine. True or false? And I've used this example of a non-amphibian and a poisonous creature to maybe illustrate this. If a monarch butterfly bit you, would you be fine?
Do they even have teeth? If
yeah,
they
exactly.
a little proboscis, they're just like doink, doink, doink.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So I love the way you described it. I love that image. If you bite a poisonous thing, that gets you sick. If a venomous thing bites you, you get sick. But if you were to bite a rattlesnake, you're fine. Don't do that. Don't bite a rattlesnake. Or if a poisonous thing bites you or licks you like a monarch, you're also fine.
You don't want to bite a rattlesnake because you don't want to make it angry.
That's right.
Right. But you'd be fine if you survived it.
The pregnant raven takes our lead, and a great example of a desert-adapted amphibian is what? The diamondback rattlesnake, the axolotl, spadefoot toad, or Sicilians. They're good at everything.
This is our new mascot.
So this is a weird note for all our kids. Sicilians do one of the weirdest things in nature, which is that the mother grows extra layers of skin and the babies eat it off her. So imagine you go home today and instead of having dinner, you just bite your mom's arm. That's what Sicilians do. It's freaky and weird and so cool. The answer is spadefoot toad. Way to go. Okay, let's see our leaderboard.
She beats them.
Drum roll. Excited Ravens third. Are we going to get an amphibian as the winner? Maybe vibrant seahorse.
Oh, right, vibrant seahorse coming from behind.
First, for all the marbles is Power Dingo. All right, way to go, everybody.
Congratulations, Power Dingo. All our respect.
So, Mr. Alston's class, we're going to come to you live in just a second. We're going to take a few from you. Great question from our group online. How does the frog know that it has to lay eggs in a pond?
That's a really good point. Oh. That's a really good question. How does a frog know that it has to lay eggs in the pond? I think I just say it's instinct.
Yep.
So they've evolved over years and years to have to lay it in the pond because it is it's like wet there and it'll keep their eggs from drying out. And so maybe you're familiar with this. So frogs now, they go and they call in a pond. Have you ever seen frogs just sitting in a pond, like calling each other? That's the deal. Yeah. So they're already there and they lay them right there.
I mean, a human example is how do we know to eat? How do we know to talk? It's just part of our biology. It's how we've evolved. And that's a very, very fundamental thing to amphibians to lay their eggs in water. But a cool question. See,
this is a great question. It's possible. Sometimes there's like one who hasn't got the memo and lays them on land, but those babies don't survive to make the same mistake. So the ones who grow up are the ones who are laid in ponds.
Evolution in action. All right, Cardston, Alberta. Come on in, guys. Grade 4s, Cougar Cubs. Way to go. Hey, right.
Okay.
Why do they moisturize?
Ooh, why do they moisturize? Why do they moisturize, or why are they moist? Tell us a little more about that.
Why are they all moist? Oh, that's a good question. If you've ever touched one, they're all kind of sticky and wet and a little funny. It's because they have to keep their skin so permeable to water and to gas because they kind of breathe a little bit through their skin and they like suck up water through their skin. So they have to stay moist in order to keep their pores clean, kind of, and to make sure that they're still able to like do that gas exchange and like uptake water like that. It's a really good question.
Really good question. All right, we've got an evolution question. How do you have the Sonoran Desert toad evolving these poisonous glands from something that doesn't have that? Like, what would prompt something to end up with poison where it previously did not have it?
Oh, that's a really good question. And so a quick sidebar, because I didn't really talk that much about evolution and the difference from adaptation. So an adapted trait, right, I said, is it gets you better at living in a place, the place where you live, and you survive better. And an adapted trait can become an evolved trait if you pass that on to your babies and they pass it on to their babies and et cetera, et cetera. And then after like generations and generations, they still have that trait. So how can they evolve poison? So one thing about toads are a type of frog. They're all frogs, but they're not all toads, just sidebar. So one thing about toads is they all have glands in their skin with like chemicals. And I said this in the beginning, a lot of frogs and toads use chemicals to kind of communicate. So I don't know for sure, but my best guess is at maybe one of those chemicals started to like, maybe one day one or a couple of toads had one that tasted a little gross to a predator, and so the predator ate them less, and then their babies maybe had chemicals that were even more disgusting and maybe even hurt the predator a little bit, and the predator ate them even less. And over generations and generations, these chemicals were sort of evolved to be defensive, meaning that it would keep the predators from eating them altogether because they'd get really, really sick. So I'm guessing the predation pressure, meaning the predators eating them, kept it was pushing the toads to find or, eventually adapt some way to keep them from tasting good.
A very in-depth question, but I love that answer. That's perfect.
It's a great question. It's very high level.
We're going to head back to our grade 4s. Come on in, Mr. Alston's class, for a second one and take us away. Hey, guys.
Hi, guys.
How many frogs are poisonous in the world?
Ooh, no pressure.
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I have no idea because I know you did. We could find out together. I could look it up. I know there's poison dart frogs, which have poison in their whole skin. I know a lot of toads have poison. And the truth is, I think there's probably some that we haven't even discovered yet that maybe are poisonous. I think your best case is to never put a frog or toad in your mouth if you don't know.
Always,
I don't know. Yeah.
You had Sam Wins earlier on in the series, and one of the essences was leave animals alone in the wild, let them live their lives. And so we can look at animals from afar and not find out firsthand, but there definitely is an answer for this. You can look up species of frogs that are poisonous, and make sure if you do that, as per some other things we've been doing this week, go past the AI overview, which is probably wrong, and go to some
probably
real
wrong.
Understand a little bit more. But it's a great question, and I love it when we mess people up. Very cool. Jessie, a potentially easier one. Do you have a favorite amphibian?
I do. I have a couple. I have two. Okay, so my study species that I studied in grad school is called the spotted salamander. It's the one that I showed at the end where I was holding it. They're black with yellow spots. They occur in the East Coast and up to Canada. They're very, very cute. My other favorite one is the largest salamander in North America. I actually have a stuffed animal of it right here. It's called a hellbender. They live in kind of West Virginia and kind of that mid-coast area, though, and North Carolina. And they live in water. They have very flappy skin folds. They're kind of ugly. They live in like moving water. They're also sometimes called snot otters or old lizards.
Mwah, beautiful. Biologists are really, we're fun at naming things, aren't we?
I love it.
By the way, I want to stress that's either life size or a little smaller than hellbenders get. Like hellbenders are huge.
Yeah, they get pretty big. They're the largest one in North America, although not the largest one in the world, which is the Japanese giant salamander, which is the size of a 3-year-old child.
Yep. They can be like 5-6 feet long. Like they're crazy.
You can big. Hold it like this. Yeah. Not that you'd want to, but in case you did.
I also want to encourage our classrooms that we don't have them on Earth anymore, but there used to be like 15-foot salamanders and frogs the size of like a large dog. Like it's actually quite a terrifying creature to envision. So look back in the fossil record. We all sort of default to dinosaurs. There's some really cool herps back then that are a little bit off.
What have you envisioned riding on it though, Jessie?
Of course. Like yeah. There's a whole other broadcast. Jessie, time flies and you're having fun. We are nearing the end of the show. I want to stress for all our kids, please do check out the Ambassadors of Conservation series. So much to explore there. IfThenSheCan.org is awesome. And Jessie has her whole own website, which you can check out and learn a little bit more about the amazing work she does. Before we bring in all our kids, both live and on YouTube, to scream and yell and say goodbye, is there any final message about amphibians that you want to leave us with today?
I think amphibians worldwide are kind of in trouble. There's a lot of things that threaten them, just like they do in Arizona. And so I think the first thing you can do is just learn about them and try not to think of them as just like gross and slimy, because there's so much cool about them. So it's worthwhile to learn about them and be their advocate in the world, because so many people don't care about them. That's what I think.
No better message than that. Thank you so much, Jessie. And as we do to wrap up every broadcast, I'm going to bring in our live class with Mr. Olson. You can flick on your mic in a sec. If you're on YouTube and you want to scream and yell at home and annoy the principal, you have our permission. Please do. But we're going to bring everyone in to say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, guys. See you soon. Thank you.